stop scrolling, because in Greek myth, one glance can end your life without a single wound. Meet Medusa, the most feared of the three Gorgons. Her sisters, Stheno and Uriel, are immortal, but Medusa is the only mortal one, which makes her the only Gorgon a hero can hunt, and the only one fate can truly break. Some stories remember her as a monster from the start, but the version that haunts people most is darker. Medusa was once beautiful, known for her hair, oaked and tucked, until a curse twisted that beauty into horror. Now her hair hisses with living serpents, and her gaze turns flesh to stone. And when a king demands her head as a trophy, a young hero named Perseus steps into a nightmare where looking straight ahead is the fastest way to die. Medusa's story begins long before Perseus ever draws a blade. In the oldest traditions, she is one of the three Gorgons, Stheno, Uriel, and Medusa, daughters of ancient sea powers, beings born close to the edges of the world where gods and monsters blur. Two sisters are immortal. Medusa is not. That single detail changes everything because it means she can be hunted, killed, and turned into a prize. But the version that people repeat most, the one that fuels the line, beauty turned to horror, paints a sharper tragedy. In that telling, Medusa was once beautiful, famous for her hair, admired for the kind of beauty that makes a room go quiet. Then a terrible event is tied to the temple of Athena, and Medusa's life is never the same. The myth turns her into a warning. Her hair becomes living serpents, and her face becomes something no one can look at safely. From that moment on, Medusa is not simply feared, she is isolated. She becomes the kind of creature the world would rather label monster than remember as a person. Her power is simple and absolute. If you meet her gaze, you turn to stone. Not wounded, not bleeding, just frozen, mid-breath, mid-scream, trapped forever in the last second of your life. Over time, the land around her becomes a gallery of silent statues, warriors, hunters, and the brave who thought steel could protect them from an invisible curse. Medusa doesn't need an army. She doesn't need claws. All she needs is a moment of eye contact. Then comes the hunt. On a distant island kingdom, a ruler named Polydectes wants to remove Perseus, either as a threat or simply as someone he can control. He demands an impossible trophy, the head of Medusa. It's the kind of task designed to end a young man's story in one sentence. Because how do you kill a creature you can't even look at? Perseus sets out anyway, and the difference between suicide and myth is that the gods choose to interfere. Athena, the goddess of strategy, gives Perseus the key to surviving Medusa's curse. A shield polished so bright it works like a mirror. The rule is clear. Perseus must never look at Medusa directly. He must fight through reflection, aiming his hands while his eyes watch the mirrored truth. Other divine gifts appear across different versions: a sack to carry the head safely, a helm that hides him from sight, sandals that let him move like wind. But the heart of the plan stays the same. Don't meet her eyes. Don't give her the one thing she needs. Perseus travels to the edge of the known world, into a landscape that feels wrong: cold air, harsh rock, and a silence that doesn't sound natural. This is where Medusa dwells, far from cities and temples, far from any chance of being understood. The closer Perseus gets, the more the statues appear. Men turn to stone in mid-attack, weapons lifted, faces locked in horror. It's proof that courage alone is useless here. Medusa doesn't care how fearless you are. If you look, you lose. At last, Perseus finds the Gorgons. The immortal sisters, Stheno and Uriel, sleep nearby, and Medusa is there among them. Perseus forces himself to breathe slowly, to trust the mirror. He raises Athena's shield and looks only at the reflection. In that mirrored surface, Medusa's form becomes visible, serpent hair coiling softly even in rest, the air around her trembling with danger. Perseus positions himself with care, like a surgeon in a storm. Then he strikes. In most tellings, he attacks while Medusa is sleeping. It's not a fair fight, but myths are rarely fair. Perseus swings, guided by reflection, and Medusa falls. The moment the deed is done, the danger doesn't vanish, because her power doesn't die with her. Perseus takes her head and seals it away, because even in death, a single glance at Medusa can still turn a living man to stone. And the myth twists again. From Medusa's death, new life erupts. In many versions, Pegasus, the winged horse, is born, alongside Chrysaor, a warrior figure, creatures tied to Medusa's past and to the gods who shaped her fate. It's a strange detail, but it fits the logic of myth. Even a monster can be a source of wonders, and even a tragedy can birth legends. Now Perseus must escape. Stheno and Uriel wake and howl with rage, and the chase begins. Perseus uses the divine gifts to flee, carrying a weapon more terrifying than any sword, the severed head of Medusa. He doesn't need to be stronger than his enemies anymore. He only needs to reveal what he carries. As Perseus journeys onward, Medusa's head becomes a tool of absolute power. When enemies close in, he can expose it for a heartbeat, never looking at it himself, and the pursuit ends in instant stone. The curse that trapped Medusa's victims now becomes the hero's shield. It's the most unsettling part of the story. Medusa is gone, but her gaze lives on, used by the very world that once feared her. In the end, Medusa's face doesn't disappear into history. It becomes a symbol. The image of the Gorgon, her terrifying gaze, appears on armor and sacred objects as a protective emblem, a warning to anyone who dares approach. Even Athena, in later tradition, is linked to the Gorgon's head as a sign of power and deterrence, a reminder that some threats are stopped not by force but by fear. And through every version, whether Medusa began as a monster or became one, the core of the myth stays the same. One look can freeze a life forever, and the line between beauty and horror is thinner than anyone wants to admit. Medusa's story doesn't end with a hero holding a trophy. It ends with a question that never stops echoing. Was she a monster, or was she turned into one? Because in every version of the myth, Medusa becomes a symbol of how quickly the world can rewrite a life into a warning. One day, she is remembered for beauty, the next for a curse, and soon after, she is reduced to a single terrifying power, a gaze that turns people into stone. And that is the real horror, not the snakes, not the statues, not even the severed head carried through wars. The horror is the idea that a person can be transformed into something the world feels justified destroying, and then that same world can keep the power as a weapon. Medusa is defeated, yet her gaze survives, used by others, displayed as protection, worn like an emblem. Her tragedy becomes somebody else's advantage. So when you hear beauty turn to horror, remember what it truly means in Greek myth. The line between admiration and fear is razor thin, and sometimes the curse isn't just magic, it's the way a story is told. Because long after the battle is over, Medusa still wins in one way. She forces us to look away and think about why.